Ever since the ancient Greeks started the Olympics in 776 BC, we have been obsessed with finding out who is the fastest human. There is no event that quite encapsulates this, like the 100-metre sprint. It is a pure, all-out showing of peak human performance, and whoever holds the world record has the right to call themselves the fastest person on the planet. Since 1891, we have been keeping a record of who this is, and on the men's side of things, only 87 people have had the right to call themselves the fastest on the planet. Welcome to the world record progression of the men's 100-metre sprint. Before we get into the records, I just want to mention that this video will only detail world records, and not the fastest times in history. Interestingly, this means 8 of the fastest 10 men in history will not feature in this video. With that out of the way, let's get into it. The 100-metre sprint is perhaps the most famous track and field event. In the event, athletes start on the home straight of the track. A starter issues 3 commands. On your marks, upon which the athletes line up behind the starting line. Set tells the athletes to take their starting positions and not move. And then a gun is fired, which is when the athletes explode out of their starting position and run 100 metres in a straight line in the fastest time possible. We start our world record journey all the way back in 1891. A man called Luther Carey from the United States ran the first recorded 100-metre world record in a time of 10.8 seconds. Back then, the times were manually recorded. There was no automatic timing, so times could only be recorded precisely to the nearest tenth of a second, and even this could have some inconsistency in it due to human error. Nevertheless, this was the first recorded world record in the 100-metre sprint. This time of 10.8 seconds would stand for 15 years, which makes it one of the longest lasting 100-metre world records of all time. However, it wasn't uncontested. It was matched 13 times over those 15 years by a number of athletes from all over the world. But it wasn't until 1906 that we would see this record beaten. The man to topple the record was Knut Lindberg of Sweden, who ran a time of 10.6 seconds, beating the old world record by a staggering 0.2 seconds, which in the world of sprinting is an absolutely huge margin. This record would then go on to stand for 5 years completely uncontested. Nobody could even match the time. That is, until Emil Ketterer of Germany ran a 10.5 second 100 metres in 1911. This time of 10.5 was then matched by 2 more athletes before the IAAF came into the picture. The IAAF, or International Association of Athletics Federations, was founded in 1912. It is a worldwide governing body for athletics, overseeing and licensing events and records. The IAAF is important for world records as we finally had an official body overseeing the recording of the records, so there was no more guesswork. This isn't to say that any of the records mentioned previously aren't valid, but after the inception of the IAAF, the legitimacy of records would no longer need to be questioned. The very first IAAF ratified world record went to Donald Lippincott from the United States. He ran a time of 10.6 seconds, which is technically slower than the previous record of 10.5 seconds, but was the first official record recognised by the IAAF, meaning Donald still gets his place in the history books as one of the fastest humans in the world. This record then stood for a massive 9 years, only matched once during all of that time, before being lowered by 0.2 of a second to 10.4 seconds by Charlie Paddock in 1921. Another 9 years after that, the next tenth of a second barrier would be broken by Percy Williams running a blistering 10.3 seconds. Again, as these records could only be timed to the nearest tenth of a second, they were matched over the years by several people. After 10.3 seconds, the next barrier would be broken by the one and only Jesse Owens. On June the 20th of 1936, he would run the 100 metres in a world record time of 10.2 seconds, and then of course, just a few months later, would go on to make even more history by winning 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics in the 100 metre, 200 metre, 400 metre and long jump event, historical figures of all time. 5 years went by, and still no one could break the 10.2 second barrier. The first man to match 10.2 seconds would be Harold Davis in 1941, and over the next 15 years, the time would be matched another 9 times, but nobody could quite seem to break Jesse Owens' world record. Had we hit the limit of what was humanly possible? It turned out that we hadn't quite hit the human limit yet. Just over 20 years after Jesse Owens' legendary 10.2, that barrier would be broken. On August the 3rd, 1956, at Berlin, Germany, Willie Williams ran a 10.1 second 100 metres, finally breaking that 10.2 second barrier and getting dangerously close to that 10 second mark. After taking 20 years to bring the world record down to 10.1 seconds, we would only have to wait just under 4 years to see the first 10 second flat time achieved. This was done by Armin Harry on June the 21st, 1960. After this record, it was starting to look inevitable that the record would be lowered into the single digits, breaking that 10 second barrier. The world waited with anticipation. Over the next 8 years, another 9 athletes would get painstakingly close, equaling Armin's time of 10.0. But eventually, that barrier would have to be broken, and the man to do it? Jim Hines from the USA. On June the 20th, 1968, Hines ran the first ever sub-10 second 100 metre sprint. He finished with a time of 9.9 seconds. 2 other athletes in the same race were also given the same time of 9.9 seconds, but obviously Hines won the race, got the world record. The other 2 athletes were Ronnie Ray Smith and Charles Green, all of them from the USA. That night has since been dubbed the Night of Speed. Over the next 8 years, 9 athletes in total would record a time of 9.9 seconds. From the beginning of 1977, the IAAF decided that fully automatic timing would be required for the 100 metre sprint. This meant times could now be recorded to the nearest hundredth of a second, and there was no longer any human error involved in the timing. This meant that the new world record became the fastest recorded automatic time to that date. This once again went to Jim Hines, who had an automatically recorded time of 9.95 seconds, achieved in October of 1968. From 1977 onwards, the record was then gradually lowered over a number of years by Calvin Smith, Carl Lewis and Leroy Burrell, until we were once again close to the next tenth of a second barrier. But it would be Carl Lewis with his second world record on August the 25th of 1991 that would finally dip under 9.9 seconds, running a time of 9.86 in the Athletics World Championships at Tokyo. At this stage, the world record was significantly under 10 seconds, so much so that sub-10 second times were almost expected to happen at major championships. So it was only a matter of time until the record would continue to be lowered. Only 2 other men got world records in the 9.8 second region. These men were Leroy Burrell and Donovan Bailey, running a 9.85 and 9.84 respectively. It would be Maurice Greene in 1999 that would break that 9.8 second barrier, running a ridiculous 9.79 second time at Athens, Greece, lowering the world record by 0.05 of a second. Now that might not sound like much, but when we're talking about less than 10 seconds of time, 0.05 seconds is rather a large amount. It's roughly the equivalent to beating the current marathon world record by nearly 40 seconds. Maurice's world record would prove very difficult to beat, standing unbeaten for 6 years. It would also be the last time a non-Jamaican athlete would hold the 100 metre world record. The first of these Jamaican athletes would be none other than Asafa Powell. Powell ran a 9.77 100 metres in 2005, at exactly the same track that Maurice had set his record at. This, however, would not be the only time that Powell would set the world record. He went on to beat his own record 3 times, running another 2 9.77s, timed to the nearest thousandth of a second, at 9.763 and 9.762 seconds, and finally in 2007 running a time of 9.74 seconds, making him the fastest man in the world at the time, and to this day still puts him as the 5th fastest man in history. The time of 9.74 seconds would last as the world record for less than a year, however. A rising star in track and field was about to break through and completely change the face of sprinting. 9.72 seconds. But this wasn't enough for Bolt. Later that year, on the world's largest stage, at the Beijing Olympic Games, he would make history once again by running under 9.7 seconds, setting a world record of 9.69. And as if that wasn't enough, exactly 1 year later, on August 16th, 2009, at the World Athletics Championships, Bolt would make history yet again.
Bolt, Gay, Powell, 4, 5 and 6. They're away. Terrific start by Daniel Bailey. Usain Bolt, though, getting into his running. Here he comes. Usain Bolt, challenged by Tyson Gay. Usain Bolt, 2 clear metres. Tyson Gay in second place. And in third place, Asafa Powell.
9.58! Smashing the world record. Unbelievable!
9.58 seconds, over a full tenth of a second faster than his previous world record. This was the biggest leap in a 100 metre world record seen since automatic timing was introduced in 1977. Using the same marathon analogy from earlier, this is like beating the world record by nearly a minute and a half. Only 2 other athletes, Tyson Gay and Johan Blake, have managed to run under 9.7 seconds, both achieving times of 9.69, still leaving Bolt's time of 9.58 in a league of his own. As of today, almost 12 years later, this is still where the world record stands. That is the entire world record history of the men's 100 metre sprint from 1891 through to 2021. Could we see any athletes getting close to this time in the Tokyo Olympics? Or do you think that Bolt's time will stand for many more years to come? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out my content. If you enjoyed it at any point, feel free to click those like and subscribe buttons down below. I put a lot of time into these videos and would really appreciate it. And if there are any other events or sports you would like to see the world record history of, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you want to see next. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.